why I can't say no, people pleasing, and my autism. I could probably hazard a guess to say that this is an issue that not just me but so many of my viewers actually relate to, and I could also hazard a guess to say that this incessant need to please other people has gotten us into some really difficult, maybe even dangerous situations, which I'm going to get into today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elena and I was 25 when I was diagnosed with autism. I'm currently 28 and I am trying to, live my life and document the different thoughts and emotions and struggles and triumphs of my life, all within a video for people to learn about in kind of a human way. I'm no expert on autism, I'm just someone who lives with autism. This issue of people pleasing is something that is definitely resurfacing in my life. I think when you don't learn the first time, the universe will keep putting you into situations so that you are given more opportunities to actually learn the lesson once and for all. And at age 28, nearly 29, I am starting to learn that I need to actually start putting myself first and having hard boundaries. At the very root of it, people pleasing is ultimately just not having boundaries and not believing that you have a right or a say to your own wants and desires. I went to a Catholic school my entire life, and I think if you've been someone who has gone to Catholic school, you can probably relate to the feeling of, every teaching within a Catholic school is there's always someone worse off than you are, and always treat people the way that you would want to be treated. And I think the focus is always on what you can do for somebody else. And while I think that is great, and I am definitely not bashing that type of teaching because it has taught me a lot of great lessons in my life about caring for other people, I also think that for very rigid minds, we can kind of think, okay, so we don't matter. There's always someone worse off. There's always someone that I need to be tending to. But I also think it's not even just that. It's perhaps we have learnt that what we are will never be accepted. What we are will never be good enough. What we are will always be critiqued. And so in order to avoid the rejection and in order to get by in life, I think we can develop these personas of pleasing the other person. I remember being, maybe 7-8 years old and eating an apple one day for my lunch. And a girl who wasn't even really my friend, she was just someone who decided to sit beside me this lunchtime, she asked, as I was about 3/4 of the way through eating this apple, so there's no skin left, it's just core, she asks for my apple. I think maybe the bigger issue here is, was she starving, and what was going on in her home life for her to want someone's half-eaten apple core. But I remember thoroughly enjoying this lunch, thoroughly enjoying my apple. I knew as soon as she asked it, I didn't want to give it to her. I wanted to enjoy it, but there almost wasn't a choice, and there never has felt like there's another option than just, yes, okay. And so I gave her this apple, which, honest to God, in this example, she probably got the worst end of the deal than me. But what I'm trying to say is, in this exaggerated example, it's that from as early on as I can remember, there really wasn't a choice of me saying anything else other than yes. So while I have given the example of, yes or no, there being a choice of yes or no, I think people pleasing can also go a step further than that. And it can also look like, not offering your opinion, particularly if you were in a group setting or a work setting, and there are lots of different people with lots of different personalities sharing what they think. People pleasing can look like not offering up your thoughts, just kind of sitting by, going with the flow, not having a hard yes or no about what any plan involves. And beyond that, it's not challenging the things that you might disagree with. So if someone says something that you have a very strong, almost moral compass, saying I want to kind of teach them something, or I want to try and change their perspective, but feeling like if I do this, it will end worse for me, so I'm not going to say anything, that is still a form of people pleasing. It's always kind of throwing it back to another person to make the decision. Even if you're with your best friend or something and they want to know, like, where do you want to eat? And you're like, I don't know, where do you think? I think autistic people have a really great way of masking a simple request of like, you choose, as being like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know where to go. Where do you think is the best place? I think we can kind of make it look like we don't actually know, but really we just want someone else to make the decision, because it doesn't matter what someone else chooses, we will go ahead with whatever they decide. But if we make the call and someone doesn't like it, that can feel highly, highly vulnerable. So this type of behavior can lead to adults who fawn. And I have talked about fawning in a previous video before. If you would like a more kind of in-depth description of my experience in fawning, I will leave a link to the video down below. But basically, fawning can look like excessive social compliance, like no matter what is asked of the person, they will comply. Difficulty asserting boundaries, so the person might really struggle with expressing their own needs and setting their own limits, and so they do become an individual who becomes overly agreeable. Disregarding their own needs, the person is, going to neglect their own needs because it might impact somebody else and what the other person might feel about them. Just the total seeking of acceptance at the cost of their own well-being. Seeking social harmony. I think this comes back to, really not wanting to rock the boat, really not wanting to express your own opinion, finding confrontation to be really deeply distressing, because that can mean ultimately rejection. And then trouble advocating for themselves. I think autistic people are very, very susceptible to, really difficult, oftentimes dangerous situations happening, and the person really not being able to stand up for themselves, really not being able to advocate for their own needs and desires, and the struggle perpetuates a cycle to continuously prioritize the other person. I have shared this man's quote before on my channel, but I just think it is such a perfect description of not only myself, but the fawning experience and why it is, I guess, a protective mechanism for autistic people. This quote comes from Pete Walker. He states that fawn types avoid emotional investment and potential disappointment by barely showing themselves, by hiding behind their helpful personas, over listening, over eliciting, or overdoing for the other, by giving service but never risking real self-exposure and the possibility of deeper level rejection. I think ultimately this really becomes a cycle, particularly if you realize that you can get further in life by not showing too much of yourself, and then you actually start to make friends and they find you just so kind and caring and helpful and such a great listener, and like all of these things that I'm mentioning I've been guilty of. I've definitely heard from friends of just like how attentive I am to them as friends. But I think ultimately it's not that I am, such a great friend to them. It's that I've neglected myself in the process of trying to be accepted. And really that's all these responses, both the fawning and the freezing response, which I'm going to talk about, it's all designed, it's all put in place so that someone doesn't look at us with disgust. They actually look at us as being worthy. So now we come to freezing behavior. The freezing response is definitely another way of responding to a situation where it's too overwhelming that we almost shut down and neglect ourselves. An inability to speak. So in moments of extreme stress, the individual is unable to communicate either with body language or words, blocking out sensory input. So the individual might cover their ears and their eyes, maybe hugging themselves in order to protect themselves from experiencing the sensory overload around them. Disassociation, so this is when the stress gets to an all-time high, and in order to basically get out of the situation without physically getting out of the situation, if they're unable to for whatever reason, the individual's brain just kind of shuts down in response to the external stress in order to cope, disengaging and going numb. It's quite a powerful tool, our brain, when it knows if I'm completely engaged in the situation, I will not be able to come back from this. So the brain just shuts it all down so we don't have to remember it. Avoiding eye contact, so even in everyday situations, eye contact can be particularly painful almost. In a heightened situation of stress, I think that a lack of eye contact can be a way to disengage and again, just shut down. And the last one is physical shutdown. So this is when the person is basically unable to remove themselves from a situation. They're either physically unable to get up or they've collapsed. The body is just unable to sustain the level of stress, and so the body can't move. Again, with another amazing quote from Pete Walker, who describes these responses, he states that the freeze response is triggered when a person, realizing resistance is futile, gives up, numbs out into dissociation, and or collapses as if accepting the inevitability of being hurt. I find that knowledge is power. When I'm currently in those situations, I find that the more knowledge is power. So I've never known why I've oftentimes just shut myself down or just frozen in fear, and now having learned about the fawn and freeze response, it's been incredibly helpful. Again, I'm not as harsh on myself, I'm not as critical on myself, so I did want to offer up that information for you guys. If you're like, why am I not fighting back? Why am I not really trying to stand up for myself, and why do I not honor my own needs like everyone else seemingly is able to do? I think ultimately you do need to give yourself some grace, because I really do believe that autistic people are ultimately just wanting acceptance, because we are born in a world that was not inherently designed for our neurology. We are very, very susceptible to just trying to get by in the ways that will allow for a little bit more acceptance. And so fawning and freezing are mechanisms almost for us to still be liked and still get by in this world. I wanted to kind of speak about something, I always try and offer different experiences that are going on for me within the videos, because I do think that if I'm able to help just one person feel like a little less alone, it makes these videos really worth it for me. The reason that I kind of started off this video and why I've included clips of me on my phone, because of my incessant need to please other people and tending to them over myself, I think what this has led to as a byproduct of, 28 years or so of me people pleasing, is that I am left with something, I don't know if it's a thing, but what I'm calling phone OCD. So basically what I mean by this is I don't know, like as soon as I get a text, or as soon as I see that someone is trying to reach me, someone is wanting something from me, I feel almost indebted to that person. Like I owe them my response, I owe them my communication, and I physically am unable to sit carrying on what I'm doing knowing that there's like this notification waiting on my phone. I don't think I'm able to recognize my own boundaries and my own limits. Like if I'm just too exhausted to respond in the moment, it doesn't matter, because I need to respond to them. I need to tend to them, because if I don't, I think subconsciously my brain believes that the person won't feel as connected to me, or they will feel let down by me in some way. And ultimately what all of this conversation is leading to is something that I have learned very recently in my life, and I wanted to share it. I think part of the self-improvement, self-healing process, what it also includes is learning to be okay with disappointing people, learning to be okay with being able to sit with that. I think we always believe we need to be fixing something for somebody else. Their emotional state is not reliant on you. And I'm saying that I'm talking to the person in the camera right now, but I'm also talking to the person who's watching me as well. Like I didn't realize that. I've always believed that it is my job to fix the other person, and I can deal with my own emotions, I can deal with my unmet needs, but for some reason in my brain Other people are unable to do that. And I just want to say that's not correct at all. It is everyone's own personal responsibility to tend to their own needs, their own disappointments, their own happiness, their own sadness. It's just something that I've learned very recently, and I just kind of wanted to end on that point, which is people pleasing is just not wanting the other person to think badly or wrongly about us, and for us to always be one step ahead in ensuring that they like us. In a way, it's a form of control. So those are my thoughts on this topic today. I hope you guys got something out of it, or at the very least just related to what I'm saying. If you'd like to relate to more things I talk about, I am always constantly uploading on my other social media platforms. They're always linked down below. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed sitting down with you guys, and yeah, I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.